Thank you, Meg. Pleased to be with you.
I'm so happy to get to meet you. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this accolade that I had researched about you, about being named one of the top 50 women in hedge funds. Can you kind of walk us through your career journey and talk a little bit about what led you into this field that is so, I feel like even if you're not involved at all on Wall Street, you know it's a very male dominated field. So let's talk a little bit about your career journey and what led you there.
I was born and raised in France, and frankly, I took a job in finance in New York on Wall Street, not really because I had an interest in finance, but just because I wanted to travel and see the world. So there was a great deal of luck and sort of, curiosity other than finance related. And then I stuck around with it. My real interest in on the for the investment business started when I went to business school. I realized that I wanted to make decisions. I wanted to be in a position where my work would speak for itself. In other words, you make money, you're right, it shows. You lose money, you're wrong, it unfortunately probably shows even more. But a job that sort of has an objectivity to it, and where you don't get lost, but you make a difference. So after business school, I joined a little hedge funds. And at that point, this was in 98. So it was a completely uncool business, because what was hot at the time was the internet. That was sort of the nascent and fun, cool industry. The hedge fund business was relatively unknown, and companies were sort of scrappy and pretty small at the time, both in people and in assets. So I joined a company called Canyon Capital based in Los Angeles. And I ended up staying there for 20 years, becoming a portfolio manager and a partner. So basically my entire career. And it was a great adventure. I retired in 2018. So I am happily doing nothing but being on boards and enjoying that work quite a bit. The award that you were mentioning is a list of 50 women that matter in the hedge fund industry, published by the Hedge Fund Journal and Ernst & Young every year. And that in itself is an interesting event, because look, I'll be honest, they have trouble finding 50 women in hedge funds, particularly 50 women on the investing side. There are quite a few women in the legal profession, be it litigation or corporate law or securities law. There are quite a few women on the banking side, on the advisory side. It gets more rare on the investing side, even more so in hedge funds, and even more so within hedge funds on the investing team. So most women are sort of, I was going to say relegated. I don't want that. That's a negative word for a very good job, but a lot, probably most women are still on the marketing side and the investor relations side, which are great jobs. The only problem is that it doesn't pay what the investment team makes. And part of my journey, or what I'm interested in at this point, is to promote women in finance, in investing, but also be completely unabashed about women having ambitions, both for their career and also financially. I don't think there's anything wrong with actually making a lot of money for women. And that's something we don't really either hear or think it's okay to say.
Yeah, I feel like you're right. The cultural kind of pressures around who makes the most money in either a couple or even just as a single person. Yeah, it is very. There's a lot of pressure on women to not necessarily not make too much money, but like don't make more money than whoever your partner is. And I think it's one of those very misunderstood kind of tropes, which is like, we're not embarrassed about making more money than our partners. We just like historically have not made more money than our partners. So I think that's a really good, thank you for highlighting that. So as you were going through and kind of, over the span of your career, in what ways did you have to, or how was it like kind of navigating such a very intense boys club?
Look, the job itself is quite intense. Many jobs are. This one is, again, very transparent in that, you become responsible. You're not responsible at the beginning for your positions. You don't have any as a young analyst, but the goal is to become responsible for your positions, whether you make money or not, and eventually have a large portfolio. So look, I'll be very blunt. I was just very focused on running a profitable portfolio for my firm. And I think that's the case for many women in my position. There's only so much you can do, and all my effort and my concentration were really directed towards being an effective and profitable money manager. The sort of fight for women representation started very, very late in my life. Started really when I stopped working, because there's something we're asking a lot of minorities, be it female or African American, Asian, in that it feels to me like we're asking them to be excellent at their job on top of advocating for more of them. And in my case, I could not do both. What I could only do is represent myself and be a great investor. And so I sort of ignored the male environment. It was possible because Canyon was run by two men who thank God, gave me their trust and their confidence and promoted me, and never. I didn't feel like there was a ceiling that I reached and couldn't break, and that was very lucky. So I just the only thing I could say is I stuck with it. I just put a foot in front of the other and tried to make more money and run more capital, and then have a business line on my own, and get investors. So it was a very sort of um, non. It was a traditional path where I really singularly focused on being a good investor at the expense of, look, I was not a mentor nor an advocate, because I really felt like there was only so much time I could devote to my professional
Yeah.
life.
No, I completely understand where you're coming from. And you're right. The idea of that model minority, that you have to, if you are somehow like part of a group that's not really well represented, or not the dominant group, where in whatever your, professional situation or social situation you're in, there is a very, very, very pervasive, like kind of belief that you need to be that representative. So you need to be better than everyone else. And you're right. Like, that in and of itself is already very exhausting, but then add in the fact that you're trying to be the best at your job. That does not leave a lot of room or even energy for most people to fight the good fight for themselves and for the rest of their group.
That's right.
So I think that you would find that that's a pretty common thing for a lot of people, regardless of whether they come from, a difference of gender, or a difference of ethnicity or sexuality or whatever. It's very hard to do both.
Right.
So this kind of sparked in my mind when you were talking about how, in like the legal field, there's a little bit more representation for women. And I was in law school and I was a paralegal for 5 years. And the one thing that I saw there was, even in this very heavily female dominated world, because we're mostly kind of glorified secretaries, admins, that kind of thing, there was still this overwhelming, I won't say a mold, but definitely like a code, right? of like what you were, how you were supposed to show up to work and what you were supposed to, you know, be conscious of while you were there. And unfortunately, clothing was a huge part of this. I mean, I had attorneys that I had to go to court with, and depending on which judge was in the court, I couldn't show up in pants because that was not acceptable. And this is after, like, I graduated college in 2008. So this was not, you know, the 1990s and 1980s. This was pretty recently, right? Did you ever have a similar issue with like
Oh
where something
gosh,
with a
yes.
dress code became a huge issue in your career?
Yes, and in fact, it reminds me of an article that I wrote, which really started me on the path of becoming, a contributor to different magazines and eventually writing my own book about my experience. But this is a story that came back to my mind on my first day at Lehman Brothers. I was an investment banker before business school. I showed up in what I thought was a very formal and very chic business suit, which was a pantsuit. And I was immediately called to HR, who said, "I'm sorry, we don't allow pants for women." Um, that was in 98, so that was well before your experience. But look, I think I understand that dressing is part of a formal code that is the work environment. And of course, there are codes for every job. But to be that backward that women would not be able to wear pants was a complete shock to me, especially coming from France, where you know, I frankly I thought I was pretty stylish, so that really took
I've,
me. I was
I've
I
yet to
was
meet a French
I was
person that breaks that
befuddled that
stereotype, to be
somebody
fair.
could.
So,
Yeah, I could not understand that somebody was questioning my level of taste. So yes, obviously there is a certain uh, dressing style that men and women must respect. And, within that, I think women have the pressure of dressing the part. Look, I never, the- I think maybe where I might be a little lucky or unlucky is I am a foreigner. I've spent now, over 30 years in this country, but I think I still appear on first impression as French, and therefore I sort of used that excuse to dress the way I wanted. And if people question my choices, first of all, as you get more senior, they start questioning it to your face. They probably said things behind my back that I never realized. But I think a lot of it, they attributed the fact that I was not from this country, and therefore, maybe I didn't know any better. Um, Look, the dress code is sort of I thought that was the least of my concerns. If I thought that dressing with, a bag on my head would have brought more capital under my name, I would have. So of the different unfairness, inequity that women and minorities face in the business, I think that one bothered me probably the least.
well, and that's good. I mean, you know, it's one of those things that you're right. It is very, it seems very frivolous. And it's like, well, can't we just focus on the issue here? Like, am I doing well at my job? How do I get to do better at what I'm doing? So yeah, I feel like
That's
that's,
it. So the dress
yeah.
code is one thing, but I can recount numerous times when I was in the middle of a trade, and the trader would ask the trader on my desk, "What does Dominique look like?" So my answer was always, "Does a bond come cheaper if I'm good looking?" Because, but that, yes, that was definitely a step further from, the dress code problem.
Yeah. All right. So you talked a little bit about your the two men at the head of your top of your organization. Obviously, they didn't kind of put up barriers in your way, which is obviously great. But did you have any really like support or mentorship from any of your other male counterparts as you were rising up?
No. Part of it, I think, was because the firm was small. Part of it may have been because the notion of mentorship is relatively recent. I think it was less prominent and talked about, 20 years ago. But no, there was no I didn't have any mentors. I learned from people, but no one was particularly vested in my career or in my professional development, other than obviously they wanted me to make money because that was the purpose of of the firm, of the job, and that was how I was getting compensated. Um, and look, I have contradicting thoughts about mentorship. On the one hand, I do realize that it can be immensely helpful to somebody. And now that I have a lot of time as a retiree, I'm more than happy to try to be a mentor to people. On the other hand, I wonder if somebody had told me, I'm going to be your mentor, and these are the things you need to look out for in the industry. These are the things you need to strive for. These are the obstacles you may encounter. Um, I think it might have frightened me. I think there's something quite freeing and liberating about not knowing what's going to happen and just doing it one step at a time. And you hear it from a lot of young entrepreneurs when they say, I had no idea what I was doing. I just, it was just one step at a time, learning the job and dealing with different crises. Um, I think that can actually work for a lot of people, not to know too precisely, too specifically what crisis and terrible future they might face. So I have sort of, it's not completely clear to me that mentorship is for everyone, or at least it has to be um, very well thought out. And if we're talking about mentorship in the sense of um, discussing one issue at a time, making one feel like she or they're not alone. That I understand completely. But sort of, there's the risk that as a mentor, you're going to be overwhelming your mentee. And that's always something that makes me hesitant.
Oh yeah, like trying to fix your past mistakes through this other person, or try and lead them down maybe the path you wish you had followed. I think you're right.
Or scaring them about obstacles
Yeah,
they might face, which they had never thought of. So it's a delicate
yeah.
role.
Well, there's a reason they don't tell you a lot about certain things, because if you knew how scary or like dangerous or whatever it was going to be before you did it, you might back out.
Right, right,
I absolutely, so I love the way you're thinking about it in terms of, kind of tackling each thing as it comes, because that's one of the things that's been really helpful in my, not necessarily career, but like work history, I suppose, to remember is that we're all doing this for the first time today. No one has done today before.
right,
So remembering that everybody's kind of taking it as it comes, and they might have dealt with more things in the past than you have, but that doesn't necessarily mean that their approach will be any better than yours, is really important to remember. So
correct.
when you were kind of starting out, then did you have any sort of like visualization or anything about how you wanted like large scale, big picture your career to go? Or was it just, okay, well, how can I be best at what I'm in right now?
That the latter. I did not have, I could see that the hedge fund I was at, it's called Canyon Capital, it was a small firm. I could see that it had the potential to be a really fun adventure. There were, 10 of us. It was very entrepreneurial. We kind of meshed. I really gelled very well with the partners who were quirky and funny, and look, so am I. I mean, I hope I'm funny, but I'm definitely quirky. So I could see that there was potential. But did I think I would become a partner and a portfolio manager? Never. So it was just, looking at my first investment, which I completely botched, and then learning from that and getting another one and having my first huge loss and surviving it and having a, working harder to make up for it. it was really a sort of, I mean, it's a cliche, but a marathon without a clear view of a 5 year or a 10-year plan. I think
Yeah.
the qualities that that I think the job require most, it's not to be a math genius or a super deal maker. It's just to be resilient and stick with it, and also have the conviction that you're just as good as the average guy next to you. That really, and I that I can say for sure, that I've always thought I'm just as good as the next guy, and I'm probably better than a lot of other guys. Um, Not because I'm so special, but that's math, right? I mean, you're just, the average is the average. So by definition, you're probably as good and than
Yeah.
most, and probably better than a few. So,
Yeah.
that's sort of comforting, even when you lose
Yeah,
a lot of
definitely.
money.
Yeah, I do appreciate the kind of the idea of looking at that bigger picture in terms of the numbers.
Right.
All right, so we only have 5 minutes left. I'm so sorry, but I want to make sure we cover a couple more things here. Um, so we talked a little bit about your writing and your articles that you've published. There was one article for Forbes that talked about the rise of women in all industries. Can you talk to us a little bit about recent changes in NASDAQ and what this really means for women in finance now?
Yeah, I think it's very positive. We've seen a number of initiatives to, well, the NASDAQ initiative is in the context of putting more women on the boards of public companies. And I think that is a fantastic development. I think it does take regulations and sort of coercive laws to get there, because if it was simple to do and if it was a natural thing to do, we would be there now, and we are not. So it started really, I think, with California, where a law was introduced that California-based public companies need to have one female board member by, I think it was 2019, and two by 2020. And that idea and initiative was taken by NASDAQ, who's proposing that all NASDAQ traded companies must have a diverse board, and it's more than women, it's minorities as well. At the same time, so that's sort of on the regulation side, and at the same time, investors are really pushing for the same diversity, and you've seen strong language by both, BlackRock and different pension funds, but more recently by the Yale Endowment, saying we will judge fund managers by the diversity of their investment team. We will vote no on slates of directors that are uniformly white male. I think that kind of pressure is really important to get things moving. And look, this is not just a question of being fair or equal. This is really about performance. I mean, there are oodles of research papers that show that diverse teams make better decisions, are more effective, and companies with diverse boards are more profitable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are certainly statistics that Power to Fly is very intimately familiar with.
Right.
Um, I can't. I think that's a really great step forward, and really, a very good first benchmark to have to keep moving that product, like that change and that growth forward. So before we run out of time today, let's talk a little bit about your book. So you have this book, Damsel in Distress: My Life in the Golden Age of Hedge Funds, coming out. I saw that it's going to be out in August, but can you tell us a little bit more, kind of a little bit about it and where people can get a hold of it?
It's actually coming out in September. August, I was told, is a period of lull in the media, so I was advised to move that release date to September. The idea is very much in uh, within what we were talking about. To aspire to do something, it's helpful to see somebody who's done it before. And there are no books written by a female hedge fund manager by a female hedge fund manager. And so if nothing else, if somebody in your audience in a university, in a college picks up my book and thinks, she did it, so could I, that is fantastic. That really is the goal. The second goal is to give more information about the hedge fund business and how it's evolved in the last 20 years. That's my humble proposition. And the book is on Amazon. It's on pre-order now, and it'll come out in September. And I hope it inspires some more women to join the business, because it really is a fun job.
That's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I can't wait to read it. I'll definitely put my name on the, or get the pre-order all squared away once I'm done presenting today.
Thank you.
So in our last couple seconds here, where can people keep up with you outside of your book?
LinkedIn, Twitter, and I have my own website. I'm always happy to chat with anyone who's interested in talking about either the business or the career. And as I said, I have plenty of time that I don't work anymore, so anyone's welcome
Lucky. Yes,
to
that's
to
awesome.
yeah, to reach me.
All right, so if you'll drop those links for me in the chat before you go, I will make sure that they make their way to the website, so that way our audience can see it. And I just want to say a huge thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, obviously,
Thank you.
to share your expertise about what it was like in your experience. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Meg.
Big round of applause for you.
Thank you. Bye.